with the recording in progress. What'd you say, Chad?
No,
I'm sorry.
I understand you wanted to make an introduction, so should we go ahead and do
We can
that?
do that. I was going to introduce Ann Wall, our new deputy county executive, at the table. Ann comes to us from 30 years of leadership, local government leadership experience in North Carolina, most recently in Greenville as a city manager. She comes from Virginia, though, and her origins. I learned today that her parents were in the Navy. I did not know that before half an hour ago, so I learned some of that. Really interesting story. Ann went to UVA, has family in Northern Virginia and in Harrisonburg, and we're just tickled as can be to have her on board and part of the team. Her portfolio will be or is community development, which we're seeing some presentations on that today with Tori, facilities, environmental services, and parks and rec. And am I missing anything yet? And so just really wanted to introduce Ann formally to the EDA.
Welcome,
Thank you.
Ann. Welcome. I knew Ann from before she was here, so,
Okay.
and I'm very excited that she's here. So,
Thanks for the opportunity.
sure. JT, shall we go ahead and, we have another introduction for somebody else, or do we want to do that?
Yes, I would love to take a moment to recognize Barry Albrecht, our new EDO director. On the back of your agendas, there is an extended bio for him. And if you happen to have picked up an agenda that does not have his bio, please let me know and I'll make sure you get one. But we did a very, very brief introduction at the December 5th virtual meeting, but this would be a good opportunity to put a face to the screen and let Barry share a few words about his experience so far.
I will, let me tell you that my first impression with the EDA, it was presented by JT, and he did an outstanding briefing on all of you and your capabilities. And you've got a good man serving you right here, so he represented all of you very well. So I'm looking forward to working with, moving this forward, trying to keep up with JT, and we see, I'll do the best I can.
All right, well, welcome, Barry. Thank you. I had a chance to eat lunch with Barry and get him going on things. So I think it's gonna be great to work with him and the team. So, all right, so I hope I haven't messed up the slide presentation here by jumping.
Never.
That's right. All right, matters from the public. Anyone signed up? Oh, there's Ann. So, approval of the minutes.
I'll move approval.
Any, is there a second? Second. All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All right, the minute,
Hearing the audio on the far end. Trying to figure out why that is. We'll stop sharing for a second.
Sure.
Yeah, it's for the far end of the Zoom meeting for people who are.
We were trying to figure out what far end meant.
Oh, apologies.
That's okay. We all had our different thoughts.
Right, that's picking the audio. Hear none.
Should we take it from the top? We can use all kinds of cliches. Far end, take it from the top.
Take it from the top.
Must be getting close to a holiday.
Just read this.
Thanks.
are we good now?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we're at financial.
Okay, financial.
Alright, so I think everybody has this in their documents. If not, you should have one, I guess, in front of you, maybe not, no. Do we wanna pull it up on the screen at least?
You know, I can take a minute and pull it up. I didn't have it included in the slides, but
Okay.
give me just one moment.
Just didn't know if people wanted to see the numbers. while that's getting pulled up, the main number that most of us are gonna be concerned with is the amount of money that we have available. And so that is 548,000 is what we have available as we look at the, incentives and things coming forward towards us to kind of take a look at that. And sorry, JT, we're putting you on the spot. I thought it would be in the slide deck.
Coming right
It's
up.
just the suspense. Right?
There we go. Okay. So we have the revenues of 618,000. Looking at expenditures, different, basically a little under 55. And then going down, really the number we need, JT, if you can scroll down a bit, the key number for us right now is this 548,833, and that's what we have available. Ashley and I are still working with the, or will be working with the finance staff to streamline this so it's a little bit easier to understand, and the numbers, right now the numbers aren't matching up as far as really what we're seeing, and if you did the math, it's not quite in flow. So we're gonna work to see, a way to make this easier for us as a tool going forward.
Director Johnson, if I can add, the way that the 4,700 account operates is that it's not a line for line match budget scenario. The figures that we have in our expenditure line items are funds that have been appropriated by budget and the board to allow us to operate the EDA from. So that 55 that Andy referred to is what we would think of as traditional EDA funds. Those are those funds that have been appropriated from economic development fees, interest on bank statements, that are appropriated in amounts for us to have access to during the fiscal year. The EOF, the Economic Opportunities Fund, that you see there with some of the delineation of the Community Investment Collaborative that some of you may remember we committed to supporting, and some of the existing VJIP, Virginia Job Investment Program incentives that we're involved in. Those are those funds that were appropriated in December of '22 by the Board of Supervisors to give the EDA the flexibility and the opportunity to provide timely support to those agencies. So just to provide some.
Thank you, Ashley.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, any comments or questions?
Just one question on the Willow Tree clawback, so that comes through the state, I guess. Where does that money end up going? What pot is that going to?
So the Willow Tree clawback was a scenario where the state's benchmarks were, they were slightly short on their employment numbers for that agreement. So administratively, the organization determined it would be less of a strain on resources to, instead of issuing the $100,000 worth of tax rebate that Willow Tree was owed from the county, that we would instead provide a payment less than $100,000 and provide them with a $30,000 tax rebate in lieu of the $100,000, and then provide the state with the $70,000 that they were owed, because of the fact that we have that we were the financial stewards of the EDA. We would have to administratively go and get the money back from Willow Tree to provide it to the state. And so we thought this might be a more streamlined option. Did I state that correct, Counselor?
You said it, yeah, very accurate, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that question.
Anything else? All right, is there a motion to approve the financial report?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, the financial report is approved. So on to new business. First is input on draft goals and objectives of the AC 44 Economic Development Chapter. JT, are you gonna?
Yeah, we're really happy this afternoon to have with us guests from the Department of Community Development. We have Tori Kanalopoulos and Ben Holt. And Tori's gonna lead us through an overview of this packet of information that we distributed a couple of weeks ago on the draft goals and objectives for the economic development chapter of the new comp plan. And there's about 20 slides that Tori will go through before we take questions, comments, feedback from the EDA. But your input is critical before this goes to the Board of Supervisors. And I think with that, I'll turn it over to Tori.
Welcome, Tori.
Thank you. Thank you all for having us today. We're looking forward to the discussion, and we'll start off with an overview of the comp plan, where we are in the process, and then walk through at a high level the draft goals and objectives for economic development, and then ask for feedback from you all. And when Ben and I head out after our item, it's not because we're not having fun here. We actually have the planning commission tonight, so just letting you all know in advance.
You'll have more fun here.
Yeah.
You'll have more fun.
So starting out with just a brief reminder of what a comprehensive plan is. It is a 20-year guide for our community, and it describes the vision for the future. So it's where we want to go in the next 20 years with priorities for the next 5 years. And recommendations include how and where to direct growth and development, support businesses, protect and restore the natural environment, provide safe and reliable transportation options, encourage housing choice, and provide parks, trails, and other opportunities for recreation. And Virginia localities are required to have comprehensive plans, and they have to be updated every 5 years. So there are a variety of ways that the comprehensive plan is implemented. That includes guiding how and where development occurs. That's primarily through the growth management policy. So that designates development areas and rural area for the county. The development areas are shown on the map in the bright colors to show the future land use designations. They are currently about 5% of the county's land area, or 37 square miles. And the rural area is approximately 95% of the county's land area. And the majority of new residential and non-residential development is expected to occur in the development areas. There are also future land use designations to guide future use and development of properties. And those are found in each of the county's 5 master plans for the development areas, and they're used in the review of rezonings and special use permits. The plan also guides the provision of public services, utilities, and infrastructure. That includes informing the Albemarle County Service Authority's jurisdictional area where public water and sewer is provided, which mostly follows the growth area boundaries. And then providing recommendations for funding and prioritization, and informing the capital improvement program. It also guides new plans and policies such as the Biodiversity Action Plan and Climate Action Plan, and then guides updates to county ordinances, including updates to the zoning ordinance. And there are 3 project goals informing the update, and these highlight many of the reasons that the 2015 comp plan is being updated. Since the 2015 plan was adopted, there have been several new county initiatives, priorities, and plans, including Project Enable. We need to ensure that engagement is representative of our community, and that we provide a variety of accessible opportunities for input, and that we use an equity and climate action lens to review and refine plan content. And the current plan has over 70 priorities, and tracking success is currently difficult, so we want to improve that with the updated plan. There are 4 phases for the comp plan update. And the first phase, which is completed, included developing the AC44 framework for an equitable and resilient community, and doing a land use build out analysis for the development areas, which I'll talk more about both of those. And we're currently in phase 2 with updated goals and objectives for each plan chapter, and planning toolkits for coordinated land use and transportation planning. And in phase 3, which we expect to start in the spring of next year, we'll have updated action steps for each plan chapter, and prioritize recommendations with big moves to complete in the first 5 years after plan adoption. And in phase 4, late next year, we'll wrap it all up into a final document and have public hearings for adoption. So there are 8 chapters in the updated comprehensive plan, which are very similar to the current comp plan. I'll note that environmental stewardship is currently called natural resources. That was an update to better reflect how we try to care for and restore the natural environment instead of just looking at it as resources. And then there's rural area land use and transportation, and development areas land use and transportation to show the distinction between the development area and rural area, but also plan for more coordinated land use and transportation elements. So there are goals, objectives, and action steps for each chapter. Goals are where we want to go as a community. Objectives are targets and outcomes to move us in the right direction. And then action steps are the implementation measures to achieve our goals. So as a reminder, since we're in phase 2, we are focused on goals and objectives. And the AC44 framework for an equitable, resilient community was developed during phase 1 based on significant community, planning commission, and board input. And it's a vision for a community that is green and resilient, welcoming and equitable, connected and accessible, and thriving and prosperous. So it is used to guide updating the plan recommendations and incorporate climate action and equity throughout the plan. And we wanted to highlight a few of the key text components from the thriving and prosperous section of the framework, since they're related to today's discussion. So I think as we walk through the framework and community input heard to date, you'll see a lot of reoccurring themes. So we've heard a desire for ample job opportunities and clear pathways to thrive, land and infrastructure for new industries while also supporting existing businesses, workforce development and partnership with schools, colleges, and universities, and building on and protecting our local assets, including through tourism. So as mentioned, in 2022, we completed the land use build-out analysis, which we complete approximately every 2 to 3 years. It's an important aspect of the growth management policy, since we need to track the capacity of our existing development areas based on projected growth and demand. It's an estimate using a series of assumptions of the theoretical maximum number of additional homes and square feet of non-residential uses that could be built in the current development areas. Assumptions are used to identify land that has the potential to redevelop or is already vacant, and future land use designations are used to create a potential build out of each property. So there are several key takeaways from the analysis, including that there appears to be sufficient land available to accommodate projected growth and demand when looking at the land uses recommended in the comprehensive plan, but noting that achieving full build out is dependent on development at the higher end of recommended densities and intensities, and that there will be constraining factors that limit build out. And there are additional factors to consider for economic development. There was a secondary tier analysis that was done to look at employment uses, looking at criteria for at least 3 acres, vacant, and appropriately zoned or designated. And that analysis found only 39 parcels in the development areas meeting that criteria. And then within that, only 1 site that met the tier 4 description for site readiness with infrastructure in place, site challenges addressed, and a project that could be brought to market in 12 to 18 months. And looking at the full build-out analysis, only about 7% of land in the development areas was estimated to have capacity for development and redevelopment. So there are 3 main steps for community engagement to draft the goals and objectives in this phase. In the first step, we shared a series of topic reports, which I think you all received a copy of as well, the most recent version for economic development. And then based on that, gathered community input on opportunities, challenges, and priorities by plan topic. And then in the second step, we gathered input on 4 planning toolkit topics for coordinated land use and transportation planning. And so those are listed under step 2. They are all in the current comprehensive plan, but they were areas that we felt we needed additional community input on and direction from the Planning Commission and the board. And to summarize at a high level, we heard that we should continue to prioritize development in the development areas, find ways to use development areas land more efficiently, and prioritize that over potential future expansion. And now we're in step 3, sharing draft goals and objectives for each chapter. So to draft goals and objectives, the AC44 team or long range planning team is working with many staff across the organization. I think at least 30 different staff are frequently involved, along with partner agencies and county committees and advisory groups. We also review the current comp plan to see what should be carried forward and what needs to be updated, incorporate updated best practices, refine recommendations with community, commission, and board input, and then of course using the AC44 framework to guide input as well. So to summarize some of the key themes that we've heard from the community to date, And we would definitely appreciate your all's feedback on if you feel the draft goals and objectives reflect what we've been hearing. So similar to a lot of what we heard for developing the framework, attracting new jobs to the county, especially career ladder jobs, using land and infrastructure efficiently, having space for startups, supporting workforce development, and then there were several comments in support of reducing barriers for small businesses, food trucks, and home occupations, and then improving options for walking, biking, and taking transit, which overlaps with many other comprehensive plan chapters as well. So I'll walk through the goals and objectives at a high level since you all received them already. First goal, the county will lead the growth of targeted industries, existing primary businesses, and emerging opportunities, recognizing the different expectations for land uses and development in the development areas and rural area based on the growth management policy. So supporting objectives include ensuring sufficient land throughout the development areas for future businesses and growth, reducing barriers for the growth of target industries and primary businesses, and encouraging efficient use of existing infrastructure through infill and redevelopment. The second goal, Albemarle County will attract additional financial resources into the community through responsible economic development activities that result in quality job creation and career employment opportunities, increased tax base, an enhanced natural environment and community character, and an improved quality of life. And supporting objectives include using Project Enable to guide implementation, planning for future land uses around Urbana Station, cultivating partnerships, and encouraging best practices to support local climate action and resilience. Goal 3, Albemarle County will collaborate with partners to support local startups, small businesses, and entrepreneurs. And objectives include ensuring a supply of diverse spaces for businesses of all sizes to operate, clear pathways to starting a business, and building on partnerships. Goal 4, Albemarle County will foster opportunity for upward economic mobility with pathways for all community members to thrive through local and regional partnerships. So supporting objectives include collaborating with local schools, colleges, and universities for career development and access to jobs, and collaborating with public and private partners to reduce barriers to workforce participation. And I think objective 4.2 really highlights how all of the comprehensive plan chapters are interrelated and overlap with each other. And this goal and the objectives highlight how partnerships are needed to implement a lot of the recommendations in this chapter. So we also held a work session with the Planning Commission on draft goals and objectives for both housing and economic development on November 14th. And we wanted to share the feedback from the commission as well. So this is just a brief summary, but the commission also noted the significant overlap with other chapters. And the importance of leveraging partnership and funding opportunities. They noted there needs to be support for small businesses and startups, especially since it's very expensive when someone is just starting out. Opportunities for career ladder jobs and career mobility are very important. And then to consider adding more specific language regarding recreational tourism. So the next steps related to this chapter, on January 17th, we'll hold a Board of Supervisors work session on draft goals and objectives for 5 chapters, including economic development. And then once we have board feedback, we'll work with the economic development staff and others to finalize the draft goals and objectives and then draft the action steps to be shared in phase 3. And I just wanted to put a quick plug for the website. If you're not already following, it's engage.albemarle.org/AC44. So you can sign up for emails we share when there's upcoming events and questionnaires that are open. And the questionnaire for economic development goals and objectives is still open as well if you have other thoughts you'd like to add after the meeting. But happy to take any questions, comments, would love to hear your feedback, and I can jump back to any of the previous slides as well.
Thank you. So any questions or comments for the board? I guess my initial question would be, beyond sort of participating this way, would it be helpful for us to sort of gather thoughts? How, like, when we get feedback, what are the best ways for us to provide as an organization or as a board to provide that feedback?
Do you want to start, JT, and then I can?
Well, I can certainly say our meeting today is one opportunity, but if we want to provide a written memo on behalf of the EDA to planning staff, that's something we could do. And Tori, be open to any other methods that you can share with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be a great way. And then we're also, happy to return once we have the action steps drafted and meet with you all again for additional input.
Anybody have any specific comments they want to make now?
Yeah, I'd like to make one just briefly. It sounds like there are different ways we can contribute, so I don't want to spend too much time. I just mentioned something as I'm reviewing this, very comprehensive. I don't think there's anything missing. If there is, I certainly don't see it. But I'd like to take a highlighter to the workforce development part, especially with regards to blue collar jobs. And as I talk to business owners, many of whom own jobs and employee blue collar positions, and I use that term blue collar in the most affectionate way because I happen to own one of those businesses, and I'm one of those guys that spent a lot of my life showering at night instead of in the morning, which I kind of see as the difference between a blue collar and a white collar job. So I look at that and I talk to other business owners, and the people that are the skills that people are bringing to job interviews are very limited. And I'll give you just one example, like automotive technicians. It's a very high paying job. If you can score one of those jobs in the dealership and spend a few years developing those skills, you can earn an income that allows you to compete with people who have advanced degrees in the housing market and that kind of thing. And I just, when I look at a lot of the work that we've done to this point in economic development, and what I see in the plan, I see that we're doing a great job of attracting people with advanced degrees. But we have people in the community already, citizens that live here, not future citizens, that I think there's so much opportunity, whether it's additional, not all of this is in our purview, but additional vocational training in schools and that kind of thing to help prepare people for the good jobs that the companies want to hire for today, not years from now after we build buildings and attract companies. I mean, we have these positions open today, and we don't have enough people to fill them. So I just want to take a highlighter to that, and that's the one thing that really jumps out at me that we could put a focus on.
It's so interesting you said that. Oh, I'm sorry, Diane.
No, go ahead, and then
It's so interesting that you said that because I was thinking the exact same thing. As we grow, if you don't keep that base infrastructure, right? The plumbers, the electricians, the mechanics, all that, then, there's really, I think the whole economy suffers, right? And we do have, I think PVCC is an outstanding organization. I would like to see more support of that. We have already spoken of that and supporting that, K-Tech, those sort of things, because you're 100% right. If we get all this tech and biotech, it's great, but you still have to have those base blue collar jobs and be able to support educationally through maybe apprenticeships, different things like that. Also businesses who are willing to provide those, right? And that also creates economic opportunity for those people who want to go into those businesses who will, the kind of the underlying support beneath anything. Your HVAC goes out and, you want to have somebody you can call, So I think that is a good point.
We had a lot of public support for that too. We did our feedback. So it was something we heard over and over again. And it makes a lot of sense. Some of the other suggestions were to start that vocational training in grade school too, just to make people aware of different career paths that they can take. And there are also employers that will provide their own training for employees, and some of those they will recruit or offer opportunities for high school students, and they can get a decent paying job right out of high school.
just to jump in on that, I would agree with both of what y'all are saying, and I would just add that when we talk about K-Tech, we have to remember that the adult program there is excellent and they do a great job. The high school program is to some degree an outdated model. Is an outdated model, needs to be revamped. I'm just saying. And you were correct in that it wasn't but maybe a decade or a decade and a half ago, and I was on the school board, but I remember the auto dealers here were importing people 2 and 3 days a week to work on cars. We were not training our children here to take those jobs that had starting salaries of $80,000 at the time. So you are exactly right. What I would suggest, and I don't want to get down in the weeds too much about this, but there really needs to be a deeper integration of workforce development into the Albemarle County High School center model that they are building out right now. That is a much more modern model. And if we could look at that, there's a center already over at the old Cowdial building. I think most of us know where that is, but they're building another center that's going to be a brand new center over on the Lambs Lane campus, which is right in the middle of the urban area. But to integrate workforce development at the high school level, right? And I'm not pushing back at all about the elementary suggestion, but I'm just saying that the schools division has this center model that would, if we could deeply integrate our workforce training into that model, I think it would be very helpful.
I think there's,
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Just tag, the last piece of that, of course, is that the K-Tech isn't going to be Albemarle's much longer. I
Well,
guess.
but Albemarle students will still be able to
They'll
go
be-
there.
They'll be able to go, but
But-
it does give, as you said, it gives the county a great opportunity
Yes.
to revamp the curriculum on its own through the center model.
And I would suggest that that may be why we're doing what we're doing in Albemarle, having said that, right? Because that, yeah.
No, I think it's so forward thinking to be saying, hey, 5-10 years down the road, what are these students going to be doing? Because you drive past everywhere and everybody's looking for help, right?
Right.
But they're not saying, hey, I need a bioengineer, they're not, they're saying, I need a welder. I need somebody who can have these basic, an operator. Those are there's a huge gap. And we're gonna see that because we're talking about building, right? Well, you need construction, you need all of these trades that if we don't have it, really support. And there's so many small businesses, mine included, that really rely on trades. I have mechanics, welders, operators, drivers, and it's really, that's the core of my staffing. And so I think anything we can do to encourage it, in addition to encouraging all of this, the traditional STEM academic globe that everybody goes for, we can't forget and leave this whole gap behind.
Well, and sometimes they build on each other, I'm sorry, but sometimes they build on each other. A child starts at one level, or a student, I should say child, sorry. But a student starts at one level and then can move into, careers, and that's how careers develop. But I really think that we will miss an opportunity if we don't work with our public school system, as you all are saying, for workforce development, to create a pool for us, because we shouldn't have our kids and even our university students, but certainly our own homegrown children having to leave here to find jobs.
I was just gonna say the aptitude, has grown too, as these, for example, the business I'm involved with, it's robotics. So, we hire as well a lot of technicians, and we hire a lot of operators and stuff like that, but the level is geared up a bit. So I think, to bolster that, blue collar learning basis, if you will, to be able to kind of step up to that challenge at this point, as opposed to hiring down, which means we're taking engineers from Carnegie Mellon or somebody like that and putting them into tech roles for a salary that probably would not accommodate that.
And I would say, no, I don't want to get too much involved in this, but if we were involved in some of those career buildings, working with the schools around HVAC, and what we need to do is for the community and everyone to understand that those are respectable professions.
Absolutely. Needed.
There has been a sense in this country that career and technical is great for everybody else's child, but not mine. And us doing some of that work and being involved in that will encourage families and children to reach out to some of those careers.
I think also your tie-in to the schools is really important because not everybody is, academically oriented in the traditional way. Some people are really hands-on
Right.
and, are really, really good with that. They can fix anything handy, but they're not really technically with as far as like book learning. And to be able to make an opening for those students who will fill this very, very important gap for us is important. Also, as a community, those are people who now are not on unemployment. They are not getting into trouble because they have no work. They now have good skill sets and they can go and get a good job and fill these really important gaps.
What active role can the economic development staff play in supporting vocational training? I mean, is there an opportunity in here to maybe focus on that aspect of workforce development?
Well, I think workforce development was mentioned under what, 4.1?
I see it mentioned in here, I'm not sure.
And so expanding on that perhaps, and I'm not sure, action items, of course, are different than goals, and I get that. But I guess I'm jumping ahead and trying to get into action items ahead. But I wanted to put it on the table as something to think about.
Maybe the relationship between the current businesses
Yeah.
and the educational organizations to say, okay, what do you need? How can we be developing people who do that?
This is one of the things that the school division's been talking about with these centers in particular,
Right.
which is when they decided on locating first over off of Mill Creek Drive, but then back to moving it into the Lambs Lane campus, to be near the employers, to get the employers in. I think if there's a way for us to support the employers getting into the schools, to show that level of involvement and, the broadest spectrum of employers that we can get to expose as many people to as many different ideas, I think that's probably the best way to maybe approach that in terms of that sort of public-private partnership at that level.
I agree, getting out of the silos, and
Mhm.
actually talking and getting together and working together.
I'd love to share, this is fantastic discussion and immensely helpful. I'm taking a lot of notes. Just to share what we've been doing to date, it's relied primarily on partnerships. So the city of Charlottesville has historically done a lot of workforce development programs. And so our office has paid for Albemarle County residents to participate in those programs, whether it's bus drivers or cooks or solar operators or mechanics. We participated in all of those programs. I would say just this past year, for the first time, has there been real opportunity for economic development in schools to get together in a more meaningful way. One of the ways that just happened to work out, a former EDA director recommended a current high school student to intern in our office this summer, and that opened the doors to a lot of discussions around what students are interested in, what they would be, what they need to do in terms of specific types of credit to graduate. As talent has become the big topic of every business, we've been getting through our business retention and expansion visits more and more conversations around how do we find available talent, how do we provide them with the necessary things they need to live here, housing, et cetera.
And your comments they mirror the sentiments of the business owners that desperately needed technical skills.
So it's
And
really
good money,
It's a
good
good
money.
opportunity right now to think about this.
So the two things that I would add, sort of related to this, but maybe more on the equity side of things, is not just people for jobs, but also opportunities for businesses that aren't, high-tech startups, but as people want to start other businesses, that may be what is often called Main Street businesses, or even the consuming businesses, which are not necessarily our high priority, but at the same time, those are the ones that people who maybe, don't have PhDs in biomechanics can start, and that we need to be able to support those folks too as we encourage businesses. So I think that's part of it, and they're more likely to be started by, people, or not more likely, but are likely to be started by people economically disadvantaged. So that's one piece. And then the other thing, totally unrelated to any of those, that I noticed is, there's reference to redeveloping and reusing and doing things like that. And one of the parts of doing that is, we need to make sure that our process allows those things to happen easily, or I should say more easily than somebody developing a kind of greenfield site. Because if it's the choice between developing something that's already existing, if that's harder than developing a site that doesn't have anything on it, then people are going to go to the easier choice. So I think just as we make our decisions about how we want to do things, we need to be able to do things to encourage that.
And maybe you all have a better sense of this than I do, but I will say I've been concerned over the last 2 or 3 years that we have proposals that come to us in the development area, and we're rezoning light industrial property. We're losing the properties, the rezonings that we could be using for economic development. And I guess you can speak to that more, JT, than I, but I find myself in some of these discussions saying, has anyone talked to the Economic Development Office about whether or not this is what they think we should be doing, or if this is a good use of that because if we lose our light industrial, and I'm not saying this very well, but JT's nodding his head, I think he knows what I'm talking about. Do we have an accounting of how much properties we have? I'm not sure I could say that I even know how much property Alamo County owns and where it is.
To answer, there's a lot in that statement. Supervisor
I'm
McNeil.
sorry.
And it's a good segue into some of our later discussions.
But I do hope that, I do want to say thank you for bringing the sites piece into this. Over the course of Project Enable over the past 5 years, our blue collar jobs and our employers are often saying to us, there's no way we can afford to buy land here, develop here, operate here. So our surrounding counties become much more attractive opportunities for these kinds of jobs. And I would like to give credit to community development as those rezonings and special use permits come in. We are being offered the opportunity, the Economic Development Office is being offered the opportunity to weigh in on the viability of those lands that are designated and zoned. You may recall our former director, Roger Johnson, asking for, hey, if this land can be put to a higher and better use, we don't want to stand in the way, but we also want to have consideration for future designation of land that provides a diversity of product and helps us augment some of our other goals. Because as in Tori's presentation, she talked about that land use build out analysis. And that's another hat tip to community development, because they went through a tremendous amount of data to find that we have 39 parcels, which Barry, part of his bio on the back of your agendas is that he is a former site selector. And so he can speak to 3 acres for an expanding business is probably not viable for many businesses.
Not in the targeted areas that we are interested in that we qualify for. That's pretty small. And what you are discussing is, I've been hearing for 7 years at a national level, but there are some great examples of communities, how they've engaged in that problem and embraced the concept of wanting to keep their young people locally within the trades. So there was actually in one city, the city put together the banks and the economic development and the schools, the universities, and they actually came up with a program where every every student, they had to be careful, because it's not free college or free junior college, but every student that graduated with a C or higher, they would have a 2-year degree with the local technical school. And the results were that, believe it or not, those children, when they went through that training and got the free scholarship, they were able to stay locally. They were able to go down to the local car dealership. And I've been in the car dealerships in the garage, and I can't really call that butts, wrenches and bolts. I mean, it's very STEM related. But the HVAC opportunities, because what happened was the owners of the companies had their children going to work for them. So there is a shift going on, and I think what you're discussing is you're right on top of it. The business retention and expansion efforts that's going on, that is a discussion that's come up even during my discussions. So I think you're there, you're on it. And those sites that and that was a question I brought up. Do we have an asset inventory? How many sites do we have? How many schools do we have? Yeah, I mean, it's I believe the EDA, these discussions we'll get there to solve these issues that you're talking about.
Really quick, Diane, I think you made a really, really good point about just the perception of blue collar work.
Yeah.
And it seems maybe a little bit like it wouldn't apply, but I really do think that, as an authority, if we get behind and we say, hey, there's value in this workforce, and other entities say, hey, this is a valued workforce, and then it's not, well, you couldn't cut it, you had to go into this. Because it's really, yes, it's really, the trades are respected, and it's because I'll tell you what, if you've ever had a plumbing or electric thing and you have a good electrician come in and do your work, you're so thankful because your house can burn down if it's bad. I mean, really, it's not an easy thing. We think of it as, oh, it's not as much education, but there's a lot to go through, all the journeyman process and everything. There's a lot of hours of trade, and we should be able to respect that as a community and start that with the leadership at every level and just changing the perception of that.
And I think that perception is really more pronounced in a university community where you have a big university and lots of degrees and lots of advanced. And I get that, but somehow or another, we have to elevate those professions and those jobs as well.
I just want to share in our region, one way that people are celebrating those is when just the way student athletes sign their scholarships in a big ceremony with the backdrop. They do, as students sign on for apprenticeships, they have a signing day. And they have people come and cheer them on and celebrate them in the newspaper and that sort of thing.
There was a point you brought up and just touching on it briefly in terms of the steps they have to go through. And I don't know that it's in our purview or how we can best. I know we missed the legislative meeting with the incoming legislators. But we see many competing jurisdictions around us reducing the barriers to entry into some professions. West Virginia in particular has done a great job in the last 3 to 5 years of reducing licensing requirements for some professions to allow people to enter those careers that we need. Cosmetology is the example that comes to mind most recently. Some you have to be very careful with, right? Electricity in particular. But there are opportunities at the state level for the state to help us be competitive in that area, because we do, and we're not the only community that has these needs. So I don't know how we can really argue for those types of things, but that would be another way for the entire Commonwealth to compete against the North Carolinas, the West Virginias, and the Marylands for some of these people. Because if it's easier to get into the field and I'm looking to move to a location and I have a trailing spouse who can move in and do something, that's going to help make an impact on that decision.
I think we, I don't want to cut this discussion off, but I also think our guests have to go.
They have to,
and,
because
and-
they're
and-
concerned because they have another meeting.
We appreciate your time. I think this has been great discussion. And JT, if you want to just capture the general feedback.
Yes.
report out for us. Yeah, we're happy to have you all involved.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all, and happy if you all wanna put together, a collective kind of round of thoughts to share at some point, and we're happy to come back in phase 3 with the action steps as well.
That would be
But
great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate all the great input, thank you.
Thank you both.
All right, so next on the agenda is the work session, on the Virginia Industrial Development Authority's training. So I think what we wanted to do was just talk a little bit about some of the things that we picked up, those of us who were able to attend, and then encourage those who were not able to attend to watch it and because I think it had a lot of good information, a lot of good background on the what the sort of rights and duties and abilities that the EDAs have in Virginia, and then I think a lot of good discussion of things that they can do and examples from other projects. So JT, you and Gary want to take off from that?
So first, let me say, this is a totally doctored image. You have your own certificate. If you've completed the training with your name, but I just, for the purposes of this, wanted to show you, it's
How easy it is to forge.
That's right. So even if you don't attend for the right donation, JT will take care of that.
Thank you for giving us the funds for this training. So this image is from, that's on the slide, is from the City of Charlottesville's Economic Development Director, Chris Engel, provided an overview of some of the activities that their EDA does. And it's not tremendously easy to see here, but they're looking at the full spectrum of businesses operating within the city and trying to find where they can add value through that whole life cycle. And so I thought this was a lens, a framework that we could apply to the areas where we have partnerships, where we have activities, and we could try to see where there are gaps and bring that back to the EDA and see if there are activities that the county's EDA would also like to do. Just to encourage everybody to complete the training, I thought I would just give a quick overview of the different speakers. I did notice that Chair Long and Director Storm were able to join contemporaneously with the training happening. But if you go back and watch it, the first day is very technical. It's somewhat complex and perhaps dry in certain parts. But day 2, I think, really
That wouldn't have to do with the fact that it was 2 lawyers presenting.
Lawyer language, yes.
But so the morning, the first session in the morning was really about legislative authority, what EDAs can do. As a Dillon Rule state, we can only do what the General Assembly tells us we can do. And then the second speaker was about financing tools, specifically different types of bonds and things that EDAs can get involved in. But day 2 was looking at, starts off with a bang. Joe Hines is a Timmins, is an engineer from Timmins that has a lot of knowledge, does a lot of work all up and down the East Coast and even nationally. So if you're looking for a primer on EDAs and evaluating sites, which is a big constraint in our community, I think this is worth your time. Likewise, the next sessions on day 2 talk a lot about that ecosystem that we operate in as economic development offices. Who are our workforce partners? Who are our utility partners? What are we able to leverage at the state level? That was with David Manley from the Wythe County IDA. And then the final one is probably the most entertaining, and I learned best through examples. It was current directors from Harrisonburg, Lynchburg, and then the city talking about things that they've actually done or are doing, the structure of it, how it came together. To me, that's really the most fascinating piece of this. And so, we're trying to prepare for a joint meeting with the board of supervisors where we want to bring forward, this is something the EDA can make a difference in. This is something we want to dive into and work on. So I believe this training opportunity gives you a great view of the landscape, and a lot of the topics we talked about with the AC 44 discussion, I think can inform your thinking as you're watching this and thinking about what it is that we want to do. And so I will open the floor for anybody that has, Liz provided an agenda that has a timestamp on the videos, so you can make sure you're getting right to the meat of the discussion. So thank you, Liz. But I thought I'd pause here and see if there are any directors that had things that they interested them or caught their eyes.
I don't know, I thought the first day was so good, I watched it two more times. Actually, it was really good for me personally as being the new person in Virginia, because I can see the similarities of the same programs from other states, but Virginia has tweaked them in a different way, like the TIF discussions. And then the second day of watching the examples of what other cities are doing provided me insights of what you can do. And then it kind of feeds my experience going, oh, we could take that idea and build it this, or look at some projects we previously used in other states. So you're right, the first day is a little painful, but if you just go through it, it's probably it's good for us as a team in the EDA to go ahead and commit and do it.
The thing that caught my eye, being very new, the first day was good in that, and I'm gonna have to go back and look at the financing piece again, because that's not where my strengths have lie. I did agree with the last presenters from the city, Harrisonburg and Lynchburg, in terms of what they did. The piece that really struck me most was the industrial sites piece. And I sort of sit there and I think, boy, we are not where we need to be. And I know with the Ravenna Station Futures purchase, that's gonna help us get closer. But there are gonna have to be other opportunities that we can find and that we can work with the board on to make sure that those get addressed. And that was the piece that caught my eye, that I feel like we're a little bit behind where we should be, just from coming from an outsider's viewpoint to where we need to be with those sites, for whatever, when we say industrial, but for whatever form of economic growth and development it was gonna be.
Because when you use that word, it scares people.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
I'm just saying.
Sure.
So, because it means different things to different people.
Sure.
And can be very off-putting, but I think I know, or many of us know what you mean, but I'm just saying, when you say that word, it's like the word development.
Sure.
You can use the word development and different people hear and see and think of different connotations.
Yeah, the word industrial, people automatically think of smokestacks.
Exactly.
And we're not,
That's not what we're talking about.
that's not what we're talking about.
And the package we got actually has the tier, this document somewhere in there, they've got the tiering structure that talks about the different tiers and the timelines and things like that. I think what I took away from it was, one of the things that we've tried to feel out in terms of what the EDA can do is really the financing piece through bond financing. And I think where we've sort of come down is that for the kinds of things that we want to do, the EDA doesn't offer a lot for that, because the tax advantage benefits really are fairly small. Where we really get some benefit, I think, is in working through things like the tax increment financing options that TW talked about, and whether either as a way to finance a project or as a way to just make it more economically feasible. And I think as I thought back over it, about what I took away, I think it's that we've really got to work with the board, because that's not something that we can do together. And I think that really figuring out, okay, what do we want to do and how do we make this work? Because, you know, the board has to agree to rebate the taxes back to make that financing work. And I think the projects we need to be thinking about are kind of the but-for projects. You know, where can we step in to make something happen? You know, a good example of that is the project that Chris Engel talked about with the Ninjik building downtown that became the SNL building. The federal government gave the property to the city turned around and leased it to the EDA for $1 a year or $10 a year, I can't remember. And then the EDA leased it to SNL, and they were able to basically allow SNL to finance the repairs by reducing their rent over a long period of time. And so that's the kind of thing that we've got to be open to, saying, okay, can the EDA do these things in a non-economic or an economic landlord would not be willing to do? And that's how we can get somebody to build the building or do those sorts of things. But it's those opportunities that we need to look at. And I think and that's something that we've got to work with the board to come up with and say, these are the things the board wants to do. I think the other piece related to that, which is a bigger issue, is, you know, if we are going to take on those things, you know, how do we do it? Does the Economic Development Office do it? Does the EDA do it? And if the EDA does it, that means does the EDA need to have staff to do these things? And how do we allocate the work between what we want the office to focus on and what we want, you know, the EDA to focus on? And I think those are topics that we've got to think about. And the county executive's office has got to decide, okay, where do we want to focus? Because I don't think we as an EDA should be taking the economic development office off in directions that maybe the county executive doesn't want us to do. So I think we've got to think through how do we, and what's the most effective? Are we, the EDA, most effective to do things, or are there things that the county itself want to do?
But it is exciting.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think they're interesting and
Yeah.
things to do, and thanks to the county's forethought in, you know, proceeding with the Ravenna Futures project, there's gonna be opportunities to do interesting things that we have, and it's just figuring out what's the best way to do it and most effective.
Quick question, is the county doing anything with site development to encourage, like, basically getting through all the permitting and some of the, you know, infrastructure and all that stuff that sometimes can take years in preparation to attract businesses? I know Louisa County did that a lot with, you know, the new Amazon data center that's coming in, and they probably worked on that, 5-7 years at the Shannon Hill Business Park, and they kept going back and until they finally were able to. Are we doing anything like that? I mean, it's a lot of time and money, so I didn't know.
Yeah, so it's a great question. Shannon Hill is about 1,000-acre industrial park in Louisa that utilized grants from the state, many grants from the state over years and years and years, decades to advance that infrastructure to be ready for that $1 billion, you know, I think it was $10 billion. Was it 11, 10 or 11?
I think it's 11.
11, yeah. So that was a 2-decade overnight success getting into in there. We have an agreement with the University of Virginia Foundation to accelerate site readiness at North Fork. The grants that are currently available from the state require a match. And in the case of the University of Virginia Foundation, they had spent a little over $7 million extending Lewis and Clark Road. And so we were able to take that investment and make a request to the state through the county to advance readiness there. So that's one site, right? That's just one site out of the entire county. But we're constantly working with our utility partners and other infrastructure partners. So when we do smart scale for VDOT, we'll economic development is 20% of the score. So we'll weigh in on these are the sites that we'd like to see advanced in that process, which is large amounts of state money that can really move the ball forward. We meet with the service authority and the sewer authority to talk about enhancing capacity. Some of the opportunities we hear about from the state, they need 1 million gallons a day of water and sewer capacity. That is not readily available in the community. But understanding where do we have the most capacity available, and looking at 40% of the county's growth in the comp plan is north of the South Fork of the Rivanna River, going up Route 29 north. So trying to concentrate where those infrastructure investments going to give us the best bang for the buck, but it's 5 to 10 to 15 years out. I mean, we can ask VDOT and ACSA and other partners to prioritize those projects and accelerate them. It's always helpful if we can bring funding to the table through the state as well, but
I think those are Go Virginia grants, weren't they?
they can come through VEDP, they can come from Go Virginia.
Was it because they're a more rural community to bring jobs to the rural Central Virginia, or I'm just curious, or maybe you don't know?
I think in the case of Louisa, it was just a willingness to say, hey, this is 1,000 acres that we're gonna commit to. We have a long-term vision and we're gonna do it. I think it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, Louisa County actually approached this body, approached the EDA about developing a regional industrial facility authority that was gonna have shares in that park. And at the time, we opted not to invest, but they were offering at a regional level, would there be a 50-acre pad for a county business to locate, and we would share the tax revenue. But these are big discussions that we got our first strategic plan in 2018, so it's
exciting regionally too, because we want to attract people to our area. They have spouses and they need jobs, and this just gives it more more opportunity for people to have diverse incomes in different places, and their spouses to find work and homes. Albemarle County's rough for a house. You try to even just afford to live here. So that's interesting.
I think if you trace that success in Louisa back 30 years or 35 years, it was largely a result of one guy. And I believe he was on the Economic Development Authority in Louisa County. And it had its birth at the airport in Louisa. But it was one guy who pushed a lot of that stuff through.
Wow.
Hmm?
Wow, thank you.
Yep.
Sure, that's right.
But it's a good discussion, JT, I agree with you. And what's the balance for our community? Because while something in Louisa might fly at, a data center, might not fly here, but there's gotta be a balance of what we can do and what we want in our community. And if you never have those discussions, nothing ever changes.
The piece that I took from the directors or the heads that spoke on day 2 was the piece that it's not solely about the economics anymore in terms of attracting these companies and these jobs. It's the quality of life. It's what does that commute look like? It's what are those schools looking like?
What the school system looks like, that's exactly right.
And that was the biggest piece, that it's not just the bottom line anymore for all of these companies that are coming and are looking to do things. Because it's a lot of what you were talking about with that trailing spouse, with the family that comes along. So we hear that, and that sort of is gonna have to change how we approach and this gets to what Chairman Long was saying in terms of what we can do and how we can best approve and offer our services and what we can do.
And I think it's often been about that, it's just that that's not been recognized. Because I can remember when the Defense Department was talking about coming down here to Ravenna, and I was on the school board, and we were asked to come to Northern Virginia to explain to the folks in the Defense Department about Albemarle County Public Schools. Because the first question that those folks asked was, what do the schools look like down there? We're not moving down there unless there's a good or high quality school system. So, I mean, and that was 2 decades, 3 decades ago? I mean, it was. So that's always been there, we just haven't recognized it like we should and played up on it, to that advantage. I'm talking way too much today.
So do you have anything you wanna? Yeah, okay. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Well, we have no action items on our agenda tonight, so the last item is just a staff report. And maybe Trevor, if I could ask you to do an update on Rivanna Futures, I can come back to you. Because I think both of our past 2 items on the agenda dovetail really well into Barry's first day, which was the affordable housing work session, where economic development was brought up on a number of different occasions, particularly in the TIF mechanism, and can the EDA continue to play a role in supporting affordable housing projects. We do, Southwood is one that I think all of the directors have heard and have experience with. Brookdale is another affordable housing project. That's a 17.5-year agreement that was around infrastructure to permit for water and sewer, to permit an affordable housing project to go forward. So that was, Supervisor McKeel helped me, that was the TJPDC representation from the private sector, as well as the Planning Commission, having a joint discussion. They were hitting on a lot of the same themes that we're discussing tonight. And so I just wanted to, as part of the staff report, make sure that the EDA was aware that that was true. And I expect that the opportunity for more TIF agreements to help support affordable housing investment will come back to the EDA in the future. Trevor, was that enough time to think about a Rivanna Futures?
I was ready to go.
You were ready. You were already ready.
The Brookdale project has been very successful.
That's
And
right.
That's been a great example of how
Yes.
sort of our first foray into that world has
Yes.
been very successful, into the TIF, yes.
Yes.
Barry's first day was supposed to be Monday the 18th. He got here early and we were able to work it out so he could start on Monday, December the 4th with same day as Ann. And after 2 weeks, he asked me, is it normal to have 4 board meetings in 2 weeks? And I said it was. Did you not read the fine print? Just kidding. It was a really great time for Barry to join us, just coincidental to the work of the board over the past 2 weeks. And really the update on Rivanna Futures is we're now officially landowners as of Friday. It is in the name of Albemarle County. We will probably, we will do something probably more public on that because we're in a time of year where I think everyone is more worried about what Santa's bringing. And so we're probably in January, we'll do something more public on it. But yeah, it's been a hard grind by a lot of folks. This gentleman here has probably read more documents in 6 months than I have in my life related to this closing. So we're really excited about it. Over the past month, Mr. Richardson, County Executive, and I met with Senator Warner on this project and his staff. We likely will be back up there in January, working with the congressional delegation and back down to the state. Kind of back to the last conversation, we have a formal ask-in to the state for funding to get us to a Tier 4 level of readiness for somewhere between 75 and 100 acres. And so that's the work that we really will be pushing forward with. Partnership development, working with the national security and intelligence community to look at needs and wants. But it's really exciting news. Thanks to the board for their their leadership and their support and their willingness to to follow this dream forward,
To prioritize.
to prioritize it. Yep. Is that good enough, JT?
Yeah, thank you very
Okay.
much. Yeah, so the other remaining items for update really relate to a number of different grants that the EDA heard about at different points throughout the year. So I wanted to share that the Go Virginia grant, I believe in late summer, we heard about the Regional Entrepreneurship Initiative. That will be completed by the middle of next year. The state Go Virginia board approved the wine industry planning grant that this body committed $20,000 to. That will ultimately leverage a little over $200,000. Shortly after the EDA's commitment, we were recognized as, by Wine Enthusiast magazine, wine region of the world.
Universe.
Yeah.
I saw that before I got here.
Yeah, so it was very timely and we've gotten a lot of good feedback and excitement around this grant to help support that industry here. Seville Biohub came here and asked for our support for a RIF grant from the Virginia Innovation Partnership Authority. They were not successful, but they have moved forward with other partners on a 5,300 square foot wet lab space off the downtown mall. This is a gap in the ecosystem that we've known about for a long time. We're hopeful that it's successful and we get more of that investment in the county.
Where would it be?
It would be adjacent to the Vault, Virginia, which is a space where the Prime 109 Steakhouse used to be,
Old
and
Bank of America.
Old Bank of America.
On the mall.
In the traditional Charlottesville method of referring to what used to be
What
The
used to
old-
be the old version.
But that vault made a great place for a cocktail party.
Yes, yes.
there. It's just their son that predates me.
With the big columns up?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What was it, George, before?
Sovereign Bank.
Sovereign Bank, yeah.
I don't even know what it says. It probably says something different on the top.
So that was just an exciting announcement that Seville Biohub brought forward. I expect that will be fully rented out and by some of our innovative biotech companies. And then the last bullet is the SED study. That's the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. That puts us in a position for federal grants. That is something that is filed with the US Economic Development Administration. So, if we think about major infrastructure grants, this would be the plan that provides the basis and the avenue for us to apply for and obtain those grants. So that's exciting. The TJPDC has been working with Camoin, a consulting group, to lead that effort, and it should be done by the end of Q1. And beyond that, for your viewing pleasure, Ashley and our crew has put together just a quick slideshow of things. I didn't realize it
You're
had
making
auto.
it really too fast.
Yeah, I didn't realize it had auto play on it. So I don't think, maybe I can just escape and we'll show it this way. But we just put together some photos of different events and things that the EDA supported and
A very informal year in review,
Yeah,
if you
that's
will, if you will.
yeah, exactly. So, I think one that I want to call out here in the lower left-hand corner was our visit to Vanderlinde Recycling. That was a really fun and informative visit.
And if you'll see in the back, the reason I'm not in that photo is Andy let me drive that big jigger. So.
I hope
Hop
not.
in.
I had a hat.
So these are BRE visits. This is a picture from Ashley. The EDA supported a study for tourism in downtown Scottsville. So this is their former town administrator and former EDA director, Matt Lawless. That study will be distributed to the EDA, so you can see the outcome of that. Supervisor McKeel at the gala with CBIC at North Fork, and a lot of good events here in Q2. In Q3, this is our high school intern, Josh, on a BRE visit out in Crozet with Imbibe Solutions. This was a visit to Southwood to get an update on their progress there. This is Trevor presenting at Seize the Day, a veteran-centric event. This was a chamber event, the Black and White Affair. So this is the director of the Office of Equity and Inclusion and Supervisor Lapiso Kirtley and myself. Just to recognize Ashley's training down at UNC.
You guys remember that?
This was Ashley presenting to a group of high school students that went out to Willow Tree and learned a little bit about the Broadway corridor.
Seems to be the Ashley slide, doesn't it?
Well, you know, I did put it together.
This was a grant the EDA supported for an expansion of Kelly Turkeys out in Crozet. This is inside their processing facility. We are taking pictures of the equipment they purchased. This is Ashley again.
Stop.
NBC 29. This is the new bounds of the Rivanna Futures property that closed last week. Tour of the nuclear power plant. And
I didn't get invited.
That was organized by the regional partnership and it was fun. We were bareback, we were slim pickings at that stage.
so this is Ashley and Liz at a fundraiser for CBIC at the Glenmore golf tournament. So it's been a big year. Thank you to the EDA for your support, your attendance, your engagement. It's helped us get done what we've been able to get done, and we're obviously hungry for more, but we appreciate everybody's support.
Working hard.
Yeah.
And I just appreciate how far we've come over the last 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever, I've lost track. But anyway,
Yes.
really good work.
Thank you.
Anything else that others want to bring up?
I just have one thing I'm gonna throw out just because I can. Talking about water and lack of water.
Yeah.
Do not throw water away. People think, oh, I don't throw water away. All your half-filled water bottles, the ice as you're going at the movie theater, you're in the stadium, even dump it in the grass, dump it in a plant, dump it down the sink. Do not landfill water. We need water desperately, and it's more than people think. So I just had to throw that recycling thing in there, and it also creates leachate in landfills, which costs millions of dollars to pump off and so forth. So recycle water. Just
There's
has to
always
throw
a
that in there.
dog bowl nearby or something.
That's right. Prevent plants. So the next meeting is January 16th. We have a draft schedule of meetings, so if anybody's got any conflicts, let us know. You may not change it, but
I think review it and then let JT or Ashley know if we have any issues with the dates, and then they can evaluate whether we need to pick another date. Next month's meeting is the annual meeting, so we'll adopt the schedule and the calendar for the upcoming year. We'll also involve elections. We really like to present a slate and make it quick and easy. So if y'all want to speak amongst yourselves before we get to that meeting and have a slate, that's certainly appreciated. If you don't have one and there's going to be a contest, we can certainly accommodate that. But we don't want to.
Our positions are chair, vice chair, and secretary treasurer.
That's right.
So that would be the 3 positions on the slate for consideration in January.
And moving forward, we're not prepared to do it now just because events have overtaken our ability to revise the rules and procedures. But going forward annually, we'd like to re-adopt the rules and procedures each year. But unfortunately, we're not positioned to do that this year.
Mr. Chair, if I may just ask a
Sure.
question, JT, of the calendar. I know you have been working with the clerk's office. You're showing a joint board meeting with, on Tuesday, May 21st. I had assumed that would be part of the board's regularly scheduled Monday and first and third Wednesdays. Is this accurate that it would be on a Tuesday?
No, sir. This is a draft and a tentative date that is still subject to discussion with the clerk. So we will get further confirmation of that exact date.
Because normally the clerk will poll the board to see if there's availability for them to meet off schedule.
Okay.
And just flagging that it might be part of their existing first and third meetings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Oh, wait. Oh, you get. All right. All right.
I'm reading the signal.
That's all right. Well, I don't wanna, so we are adjourned until January 16th.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Man, I'm.
By the way,
Those are the
I had two
presentation.
friends send me that wine announcement.
Davita.
One from California, one from Arizona.
Well, self-destruct, 30 seconds out.
Get you a cup of coffee.
You rent a townhouse.
The two things like Tom
When you're ready,
Ferry.
just work out something.
Can't believe you didn't invite me to go.
Creatively that way, right? I feel like sometimes I do my best brainstorming after a couple of. I'm like, I should really write this down.